The tricks have been tricked and the treats have been treated. And we start a new month, a month of turkeys and falling leaves, and let's hope a wonderful election. Welcome to the FBOMB Global Flash Reading. I am Francine Witte, your host, and I'm hosting from good old New York City. We have a wonderful lineup of readers for you tonight, and I welcome you to grab a glass of wine, settle in, and enjoy some great flash fiction. I like to always start with something more to warm up the Zoomosphere, so that no one has to be that first person to go. So, I was just recently up in the Boston area, took the train down, and you know, went through Providence. So this made me think of this piece that I wrote in a Providence motel. He told her he had news, and let's get away to Rhode Island. He told her he wanted the news to be separate from the rest of their lives. They took the train and checked into a papery motel. They sat all night, mildew and floral bedspread, her waiting and him nodding and close to speech. The morning light through the curtains fell across his face in a way that made him almost young. How he looked when she still loved him. I'm dying, he finally said when the air would hold no more silence. She sipped the last of the drugstore wine. We all are, she said. Yes, but I really am, he said, something growing in my chest. Her mouth almost forming into I'm sorry. She never knew anymore what was true. She looked at the empty plastic cup and wished it were filled with coffee. Through the thin wall, the grunts of an early morning couple. She wondered if that's how he sounded when he slept with her sister. She looked again at the plastic cup and realized it would split open if it were filled with hot coffee. She looked at her husband, who still looked young and lovable in the morning light, which is almost always a terrible liar. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to get started. We're going to start with Zvi A. Sesling, Brookline, Massachusetts Poet Laureate, 2017 to 2020. He edits Muddy River Poetry Review, and also 10 by 10, which is not in his bio. Wonderful flash journal. He's the author of 4 poetry books and 3 poetry chapbooks. His selected new poetry will be published by Big Table Publishing, and he has a new book out with Paul Beckman, who we'll be hearing from in just a few minutes, 40 stories that they co-wrote together, from Big Table. Zvi A. Sesling.
Thank you, Francine, and thanks for the plug. And I see my colleague and co-author Paul Beckman is here. And
Oops. Niles, I think I muted you. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry. That was my fault. Sorry.
Not Niles, Zvi.
Zvi is muted.
Yeah, I'm not on mute.
sorry about that.
No, that was my fault. I'm sorry.
That's okay. As I said, I'm really glad to see my colleague and co-author Paul Beckman here. He'll read from his stories and I'll read from mine. And my first story is called Homeless Man. The homeless man, a Vietnam veteran, sits on the stairs of the Arlington Street Church. He is dressed in a combat camouflage outfit and wears a green beret. He sits holding another beret into which people drop money because he has a sign leaning against his knees that states, "Homeless, need money for food." So I stop and ask, "Would you like money or food?" "Food," he answers. "So I'll take you to a restaurant I'll take you to the restaurant next door, I say, pointing to the Public Garden restaurant, a popular upscale eatery on Arlington Street. Can't go there, he says. I've been booted out twice by the manager. Wouldn't even give me a glass of water. I am outraged. Here I am teaching a course on the history of the Vietnam War, and the vet is being denied even a drink of water. I grab his arm and say, "Come on, we're going in there. They'll kick us both out," he says. We walk the few feet to the door and go in. Sure enough, as the homeless man predicted, the manager comes over and tells the homeless man to leave. "I told you we don't want you homeless people in here. We are a class operation." And my anger is clear as I say, "Look, fellow, my money is good. This fellow is a hungry veteran who fought in Vietnam and deserves respect." "Yeah, I bet you'd say that about Holocaust survivors too," the manager says. "Damn right." I can feel my face getting red. My parents survived a concentration camp, and I try to help our homeless vets. "Yeah, I bet you're one of those do-goody liberals at the college around the corner." "Yep, you got that right. I work at the newspaper and double as adjunct teaching the history of the war. I just happen to be a bit more fortunate than this man." The manager grunts and says, "Well, as long as you have the cash," he turns and leaves and walks towards the kitchen. After the two of us eat a hearty lunch, I walk him back to the church stairs, where he takes his place, the sign leaning against his knees, the beret with a couple dollars in his hand. "Thanks for the lunch," he says, "and sorry your parents had to suffer like that. My parents never did. They were here." I nod and begin walking towards the subway. So that's that one. This one is called Roth Learns a Lesson. The day of his mother's funeral, Roth dresses in his best suit, nearly ironed white shirt, and a black tie. His shoes are polished and his hair slicked back. That he is nervous is without doubt. He arrives at the gravesite in his new Oldsmobile Cutlass Calais Quad 4 FE3 and sees where the casket will be lowered. He gets out, locks the door with the motor running. The funeral director approaches him and tells him the motor is running in his car. That's when Roth realizes he has locked the door with the keys inside. The funeral director tells Roth not to worry. He has a gravedigger who was just released from prison after 3 years. He was a car thief, the director tells Roth. "And can he open this car?" Roth says. "Any car," the funeral director responds. Roth nods. The gravedigger is summoned to the car and the problem explained to him. The gravedigger says to Roth, "You want me to break into your car?" Roth acquiesces and the gravedigger says, "I've never been asked to break into a car. Never thought it was a legal thing to do." The gravedigger studies the car for a moment, asks Roth if the window is manual or electric, to which Roth says it's electric. The gravedigger places his hands on the driver's side power window and lowers it an inch or two, slides one hand in, and pulls the window down so he can get both hands on it, then brings it down all the way until he grabs the inside door handle and opens the door. The funeral director and Roth look on with amazement at the gravedigger's talent. The funeral director tells the gravedigger to move the car up a bit so as to accommodate the hearse. The gravedigger puts the car in drives and leaves. After the burial, the funeral director has Roth driven home in the hearse. When he enters the house, he finds the place has been ransacked, his valuables and cash gone. The car is in the garage. So one more and I'm done. let me see here. I got it marked. I'm getting there.
It's fine.
There it is. This one is called Chili Man. Chili Man remembers. He remembers that lunch in the high school cafeteria. He remembers the long table, students seated side by side like a prison. He remembers that often students sit next to a friend. Some students bring their own lunch, often peanut butter and jelly, but on that day, Mark Scheinblum, aka Chili Man, buys a bowl of chili along with dessert and soda. He walks with it all on the tray, and as he goes behind me with the tray over my head, someone says something that makes me jump up, my head hitting the bottom of the tray that Chili Man carries. It makes the bowl of chili on his tray flip over and land on him. He stands there with chili oozing down over his shirt, of course, makes every student, even the monitors and some of the teachers in the cafeteria, laugh and point at him. Chili Man begins scooping it off his shirt. His friend, Melvin Schwartz, laughs and points at him. So Chili Man takes it off his shirt and pats it on Melvin, who responds by doing it back to Chili Man. Pretty soon they have their own private food fight until Chili Man remembers who caused the chili to land on him. He stops and stares at me, his face now dripping with chili. I see him glower and the thoughts in his head as he turns towards me. My feet are already moving when I see the look on his face, narrow eyes, arms reaching out for me. I push over the chair between us so he has to hurdle it or go around, giving me seconds I need for a head start. He gets even angrier because most of the students in the cafeteria are laughing even harder. Oh, how I run. Chili Man never has a chance to catch me. Now, 50 years later, at the high school reunion, he says, I would have killed you if I had caught you. But it's 50 years later, and we laugh about what it seemed like a life-changing event. Now, just a joke between Chili Man and me. But I do believe that had he reached me, I would not be here today to tell the story. Thank you.
Oh, wonderful, Zvi. Um, so those stories were all from the new book, is that correct?
Yes, they're all three are in the new book that Paul and I have written together.
And like I'm just curious, were they like did you just put your stories together, or did you write the story? Did you and Paul sit down and write a story together, or you just put your own stories with his stories?
Well, what happened was Paul asked me if we wanted to do a book together,
Mhm.
and we decided he would do his stories, 20 of them or so, and I would do my 20 or so, and we
Great.
put them together, and we have what I believe is a masterpiece anyway. And Paul's stories, I must say, are very different than mine, but they're wonderful, each one of them.
As are yours, Zvi. Thank you
Thanks.
so much for being with us tonight, Zvi A. Sesling.
Thank you. I have to leave at 7 o'clock tonight.
Well, we're glad you could stay. You could come and visit in the FBOMB. Okay, next we're going to hear from the other half of 40 stories, the other 20 stories. Paul Beckman, Paul, who is responsible for this entire reading. He's the founder of the FBOMB, having done it originally in New York City at KGB and moved to Zoom. Once the pandemic hit. And I think, Paul, you have to take yourself off mute in a minute. So I see that you're on mute. So let me read your bio. And so Paul Beckman's newest flash fiction collection, solo, I guess, is Becoming Mirsky's Chervena Barba. came out in October 2023. This and his Flash collections, Kiss Kiss, Truth Serum Press, were finalists for the Indie Book Awards. His stories have appeared in Necessary Fiction, Lee Crow, The Wax Paper, and he was nominated for 2021 Best of the Web and selected for Best Microfiction 2022. Paul's latest collection is 40 Stories, Big Table, a collaboration with Zvi Sesling. So welcome back to the FBOMB, Paul Beckman.
Thank you. Champ. This was my opportunity to be called champ. I liked the idea, the sound of the word, and the way the letters rolled from my tongue to palate. Most champs are boxing champions. This will not be the case with me. I plan on being the craps champ of Las Vegas. I'm 32 and have been rolling the bones since I was a young boy playing chutes and ladders. I was good at that and won the nursery school tournament and was called champ on my classmates. This time is different. Last month, the postcards went out inviting the top 20 crap players to Vegas to compete in the World Scraps competition. I practice rolling the cubes 3 to 4 hours a day, and my fingers have taken on a long, bent persona, much like having shrimp fingers. I would attribute my shrimp fingers to my success because I can grab the dice a certain way and increase my odds of getting the number I'm shooting for. Of course, nothing is guaranteed, but an advantage is an advantage. Some of the older players have accused me of cheating because of my shrimp fingers, but they're only talk and jive to try and get me off my game. They all have their signature way of grabbing and rolling the dice, and I don't accuse them of cheating. I'm scheduled for table 1 with 9 others, and our top 5 get to play their top 5 for the finals. I show up with my cooler of water so I can keep my shrimp fingers hydrated. We get introduced to the audience, but not each other since we all know one another. We each have our seconds. Mine is my Uncle Morty, who spent his army time shooting craps and playing cards. If he sees me acting a little uptight, he'll massage my shoulders, cool me down by waving a towel on my face, and keep me supplied with fresh chilled water, raisinets, along with marble hava. My table went first, and naturally I was in the top 5 and moving off to the finals table. The favorite of table 2, Bare-ass Brodsky, just squeaked by. It appeared he lost his concentration for a few minutes, and according to Vegas rules, he plays in the nude, hoping to distract the other players. He's never been champ, but has come in second twice. We take a break for lunch, and I have my lucky sandwich, chopped liver on raisin bread, cut into diagonal quarters and onion rings. Some of the players shared a lunch table, but for me, it's just me and Uncle Morty, all part of the sight game. The bell rings. We line up around the craps table, take out a roll of bills, exchange them with $1,000 and $500 chips. And in 45 minutes, it's just me and Bare-ass Brodsky left. He throws snake eyes and then boxcars twice. Then he passes me the dice, and I go all in. Grab the dice with my shrimp fingers, move them around the table, have Uncle Morty raise the net and order me, and I pick the ivories up, blow on them, and roll. Brodsky and I are looking at each other and not the dice on the felt. There's a collective intake of breath and a cry of champ, followed by applause, breaks out. Still not looking, Brodsky and I turn towards each other and engage in an uncomfortable bro hug. Thank you. This is more of Michael than a flash. Scrub-a-dub-dub. Can you believe our good fortune? Beth said to her husband as they looked at him. He's so beautiful. Who would have thought it, Martin said. I was afraid he's going to come out looking like me. With tears in their eyes, they hugged. Baby slept. The next week, the families came for the bris. The aunts oohed and ahed, while the uncles talked amongst themselves and noshed. 2 weeks later, they had a party for their friends. Can you believe it, Martin said, that Beth and I, homely as we are, could have such a beautiful baby? With our looks, what were the odds, Beth asked. Here, look at our baby pictures. And Beth showed hers and Marty's baby pictures, and it was true. They were no beauties. And just as adults, their noses and ears were accentuated and their smiles lopsided. Who would have thought that a baby from the two of us could be so beautiful, Martin asked, his arm around Beth's shoulder. Their friend said all the right things and kitschy-cooed and hawed all over the place. But in fact, saw a baby who combined the most prominent features of both parents and who was anything but beautiful. As they lay in bed that night, Beth and Martin each wondered if the other really knew. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Paul. That was wonderful. Well, this book is great. I did have the pleasure of blurbing it, so I've read it already. And it's just wonderful. These both Zvi and Paul are just such good, smart, funny, but poignant writers. And the story's really kind of like, they're separate, but their voices really blend in such a great way. So thank you for letting us hear some of these stories from your wonderful new book. Where can we get your book?
Stores everywhere.
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 That's kind of like, I was hoping for something a little bit more specific, like Amazon or Big Table or.
Yeah,
It is
available on Amazon.
It is on Amazon, and
Okay.
you can get it from a publisher, Big Table,
Okay.
or you can get them from Paul directly.
Or you can get them from that library behind you.
Yes, it's in the library. Yeah. Well, thank you again thank you for reading from that, Zvi, and thank you, Paul. And it's nice to see you. We all love you so much, Paul. Good to see you, and happy birthday yesterday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah. Okay. Well, now we're going to hear from Niles Reddick. He's the author of a novel, 4 short story collections, and 2 novellas. His work has appeared in over 500 publications, including the Saturday Evening Post. I love to say that. New Reader Magazine, Cheap Pop, Flash Fiction Magazine, Citron Review, Hong Kong Review, and Vestal Review. Niles Reddick.
Thank you, Francine, and it's good to see all of you again. I do have just 2 very short pieces that I did recently. I don't know if I may find a mistake as I'm reading. You know how you are. You write them and you read them and you read them and you read them and you read them. And you don't always catch everything. The first one is titled An Unreturned Call. The cell vibrated on my desk, and I glanced at the number from an area code I didn't recognize, and I figured it was a sales call, spammer, or maybe the Facebook hacker that had cloned my account. After repeated reports were filed, I'd received an email from Facebook that the hacker's cloned account didn't violate their policies. The message was from a man who was a retired elementary school teacher of my brother's, who was reaching out from his hospice bed to locate my brother, who toppled over and died from a bad heart he didn't even know he had while mowing his yard, leaving a widow and 2 small children to grapple with life's most difficult questions and struggle to make ends meet on small government stipends. Perhaps the dying teacher didn't know about Googling a name in quotations to reveal my brother's obituary in the first search attempt. His voicemail hadn't indicated a reason for the call, and the lack of an explanation left me wondering why, after all these years, would a teacher who was a single and awkward fellow and who'd puttered around in a VW bug like Ted Bundy would have wanted to spend time with a 6-year-old boy, or conversely, why their mother would have approved it. He assumed the worst, that the teacher had molested his brother, wanted a clean conscience and a free pass to heaven before the last shot of morphine sent him into the tunnel. I didn't call him back. And this is a piece titled His Shell, which is even shorter than the last one, and a really weird story that came from a dream. Karen, I know you're an analyst and therapist, so once you hear this, you may be very concerned for me. His shell. Her dad was working from home in his office. The child walked in, thumb in mouth, and stood next to his chair. She yanked her wet thumb and pointed. Dada, what's that? A hermit crab shell. You can hear the ocean if you put it next to your ear. He placed it gently on the side of her tasseled hair. I hear it, I hear it. Her dad smiled. He'd kept the shell from his childhood and loved the hues of blue and green, the way it seemed to point on one end, then circle out, growing and expanding with lines and bumps from a crab's life experience. It reminded him of his former and dark existence, mostly hiding from predators in the colony. He placed his shell back on the desk. He pulled his daughter close with his claws, and he shared with her that life was better without the shell, but it was a reminder of their ancestry. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Niles. Those are wonderful stories, and thank you for being here with us tonight. And guys, don't forget to read comments. When you've read the comments in the chat. They're really kind of fun. And feel free, everybody else, to put comments in the chat because people like to read them. So that was Niles Reddick. We have a really nice group here tonight, and I want to just kind of give a shout out to some of the people who aren't reading with us. We have Bill Merkley, David Bright, Becky Parker, Bernice Holtzman, Calliope Peleos, Kenneth Christ, Cheryl Rice, Jay Bukowski, Luella Lester, Maria Scarville, and John Park. And forgive me if I missed anybody. So really nice to have you because it's nice for people, to support other people, even if they're not reading. And I always think that's a very beautiful thing. And I like to say you are here because you are beautiful, and you're beautiful because you're here. So welcome. And thank you for being here. Okay, next, we will hear from the aforementioned Karen Schauber. She was just mentioned by Niles. Karen Schauber's flash fiction has received nominations for the Pushcart Prize, Best Small Fictions, Best Microfiction, and the Wigleaf Top 50. She curates Vancouver Flash Fiction, an online research hub, and in her spare time is a seasoned family therapist in her spare time. Read her at karenschaubercreative.lily.com, and Karen, feel free to put that in the chat if you like. Karen Schauber.
Thank you so much, Francine. I'm going to read 2 micros. The New Normal. Harper climbs the fence, straddling the railing while he kicks off rubber snake boots, setting his toes free to wiggle and probe. He hoists himself up into the loins of the tupelo tree, looming large in front of Mamie's floating shack. His phalanges grip gray furrowed bark, and he scampers up its trunk with the agility of a feral spider monkey. Gnats encircle his head, clamoring for morsels of sweat, pus, and blood. Mamie watches her wayward son from below, knowing nothing, she says, will keep him down, keep him home. She is grateful that he will accept food from her, that she catches a glimpse of him from time to time, maneuvering along the switchback of bald cypress, tupelo, and pumpkin ash trees, the sentinels of the forest, of the swamp, his refuge. Today, Harper has descended from the canopy. Her birthday. She prepares a jambalaya with shrimp and andouille sausage, onion, okra, and celery, heavily dousing the dish with cayenne. Smoke infused with the piquant aroma forces its way deep into the bayou, cajoling him home. Mellow yellow if he touches right down on the porch, she promises. The last flood took his paw away, the pneumonia swift and decisive. Damn near put her under too. Mamie sent Harper up into the trees, high above the swelling waters where he would be safe. Didn't expect the adaptations to take such a fierce hold, though. Harper's new proclivities and improvement, to be sure. Prehensile tail now fully formed. She packs up the leftovers in the checkered tablecloth, and Harper ascends back up into the trees, her heart tucked warm under his jersey. The next one is The Master. Thank you. The Master comes around only once a year. I wait by the bay window longer than is necessary. Food and potty brought to me, so I do not have to leave my perch. His arrival timed to the second, but I do not know which one. My feet leaden like a toy soldier as I fight to keep my eyes open. When he appears, my outstretched hand will be shaking. If he looks me in the eyes, I will melt. His message in a sealed envelope, tailored for me. I only hope that I can decipher the code, play my part, make him proud. I tell myself I am made for this, that nothing else matters. But when the doctors come around, they do not share my belief. Their heads tilt this way and that, clicking like a metronome, blocking my view. They do not know what they do. I yell for them to get out of the way. Their chatter will scare him away. But it is me they want to put away. And as they wheel me down the corridor, I glimpse out of the corner of my eye the master who has come to save me, holding that manila envelope with words that would set me free. He tips his hat and offers a half smile, letting me know he'll be back again next year. And until then, like waiting for Santa, I'll try my best not to kill anyone. That's it.
Thank you so much, Karen. That was beautiful. And a really good illustration of how, hearing the author read the story is just such a great experience. Like it adds so much, even to the most wonderful stories, to hear your inflections and the way you read it. It's beautiful. So thank you so much for reading for us tonight. And that's Karen Schauber. Zvi put a little note in the chat reminding everybody, and those of you who aren't here but watching the recording, to submit to 10 by 10. That's Zvi's flash journal. And it's 20 submissions are 24/7, 365. I guess that's not always, so basically always. Okay. Yeah, don't forget to submit to that. It's really a lovely journal. Okay, thank you, Karen Schauber. Next, I don't know if can you hear that? Like there's like firecrackers or something going on. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'm very aware of it. So must be the Mets fans celebrating the Yankees
Hopefully
loss.
it's just firecrackers. It's only firecrackers.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah. All right, next we're going to hear from New Zealand, where it's tomorrow. So we wonder what happened in the future. Sandra knows what happens in the future, which is awesome. Sandra Arnold is an award-winning writer with 8 published books. Her flash fiction collection, Below Ground, was published by Inspired in the UK in June and is available on Amazon. Her short fiction received nominations in the Best Small Fictions, Best Microfiction, and the Pushcart Prize. She has an M. Lit and a master's in Lit and PhD in creative writing from Central Queensland University, Australia. Sandra Arnold.
Thank you, Francine. I've just returned from a month in England where I attended my college reunion, talking to the women I shared a hostel with for 3 years at Teachers College, brought back a lot of memories. The memories reminded me how we use them in fiction. The story I'm going to read now was written after an earlier reunion and published in my flash fiction collection, Below Ground. The title is Mercy for Miss Bint. Some of it is true, not the most horrific bits. All of us, all 12 of us, were in Mercy's room, lounging on her bed, when the new housekeeper strode in without knocking and introduced herself. We clamped our lips and nodded, blank face, polite. But as soon as she marched out again and slammed the door behind her, we collapsed into hysterical laughter. Oh my God, who'd be called that? She should have changed her name. I would have changed mine if I'd been saddled with one like that. Mercy reached for the dictionary. In Arabic, it means daughter, she said, peering at us over her glasses. It's also Anglo-Saxon in origin as a surname, meaning one who lived on a bend in the river. And of course, it's used as a derogatory term for, yes, Mercy, we know, we chorused, rolling our eyeballs. We'd already predicted that Mercy would end up as headmistress of a posh girls' school, or a librarian, or a vicar's wife, while the rest of us were busy traveling the world, living wild adventures. We couldn't have been more wrong. When she'd been in residence for a couple of weeks, Miss Bint started patrolling the corridors at night, a diminutive but scary figure if you encountered her in the dark on your way to the loo. She loomed out of the shadows, her grey hair wound up in giant curlers, a long white nightie trailing on the floor, a lighted cigarette hanging from her mouth, and a large wooden rolling pin in her hand to ward off intruders. Months after the fire, the inquest found the most likely cause was that Miss Bint had fallen asleep while smoking in bed. Over the years, stories appeared in newspapers about the house undergoing yet another reconstruction. There was often a line or two about some of its current and past residents claiming to have been startled by or hovering in the shadows. Photos of moonlight slanting through the window onto the stairs usually accompanied these stories, giving a plausible explanation for what the residents claimed they'd seen. Miss Bint's duties involved taking care of the hostel, making breakfast for us 12 girls, and reminding us we had to be back in the hostel by 10:30 on weekday nights, and no later than midnight on Saturdays. One night, we were woken up by her screeching at someone in an upstairs room. Next day, Mercy and her best friend appeared at breakfast, white-faced and silent. We noticed they avoided eye contact with Miss Bint, but they wouldn't be drawn as to the reason. After the screeching incident, Miss Bint took it upon herself to listen outside our doors or burst into our bedrooms late at night. If she found any girl sharing the same bed, her rage was incendiary, although back then we had no idea why. Her constant refrain was, "You're training to be teachers. Your conduct must be exemplary. 40 years after we graduated, there was a reunion at the college. After the welcome lunch and speeches, we caught up with each other's lives. We found that the majority of the women we trained with still worked as teachers, though some had changed professions. One was a politician, one a social worker, another made nature documentaries. Some had gone into the police force, of all things. Some had traveled. Some now lived in other countries. Some were divorced. Some were married, though not always to men. Those of us who had lived in the hostel trooped back there to revisit old memories. We wandered around the gardens, admiring the trees, the flower beds bursting with colour, and the lawns as smooth as bowling greens. We laughed about the parties we'd had in the house, the weird boyfriends, the heartbreaks we'd witnessed, the ambitious plans we dreamed up for ourselves, when we had a whole life stretching out in front of us. But underneath our incessant chatter and laughter, I knew we were all thinking of the last time we'd stood outside the house. The night when we'd stood cowering in the dark, watching a fire engine extinguishing the flames, and an ambulance crew carrying a body out on a stretcher. The current caretaker opened the front door and ushered us inside. "It's had a few makeovers since your day," he said. "After that terrible fire, it was eventually repaired and turned into a home for delinquents. Then it was an orphanage, then a maternity home. For the last 10 years, it's been an aged care facility. Next month, work will begin to turn it into a boutique hotel." We walked through the wood-panelled hall, up the wide staircase, in and out of the empty bedrooms, each room full of, "Do you remember when?" Back down the stairs into the common room, the dining room, the kitchen, past Miss Bint's old room. The caretaker asked if we wanted to look inside. We shook our heads and hurried on. The caretaker noticed. "Yeah, most people react that way when they pass this room. Too many stupid stories over the years about what folks say they've seen. Myself, I give no credence to that kind of rubbish. It's the living you need to be wary of." Outside in the sunshine, our group breathed a collective sigh of relief. Then we all started up again with our fake jolly voices. "Oh, so good to see the old place after all this time, eh?" "Yep. Fabulous to catch up with everyone face to face." "Yes, pity some couldn't make it back, though." "True, I was hoping to catch up with Mercy." Old Bint hated her. The feeling was mutual. "Anyone know where Mercy went after her graduation?" "I think it was South America or the Middle East, maybe China. I heard she became a missionary." "Ha, that doesn't sound likely." Then I said the one thing no one wanted to say, the one thing no one wanted to hear. I've always known that Mercy wasn't the only one who started that fire. That's it.
Whoa. That was wonderful, Sandra. Wonderful story. And I just could listen to you read all night. Love your accent. And it added so much to that story, too. So thank you. Thank you, Sandra Arnold. Thank you for being here with us tonight. Next, we're going to hear from Cindy Rosmus. And Cindy Rosmus, excuse me. Sorry. Cindy Rosmus originally hails from the Ironbound section of Newark, New Jersey, once voted the unfriendliest city on the planet. She talks like anybody's from West Side Story and everybody from Saturday Night Fever, which is kind of a nice contrast to Sandra, right? Her stories have been published in places like Shotgun Honey, the Rye Whiskey Review, and A Rock and a Hard Place. She's the editor-director of Yellow Mama. Cindy Rosmus.
Thanks, Francine. And I just got to say, you must have radar, because right before you said what you said about listening to Sandra all night, I wanted to say the same thing. I could listen to Sandra all night. And Sandra, I wish I was there with you in the daytime because I hate the dark. Anyway, I'm going to read a flash story I wrote today because I'd been on a dry spell and I was determined to break it today. So you guys will let me know if it works. It's called Blanca Move. Perry Mason Night. She loved Perry Mason, not my pop. To Mom, Perry Mason was real, not an actor or fictional character. In crisp clear black and white, that face filled our TV screen. Not fat and jowly like when the actor got old. Young, handsome, and wise. And when something amused him, I love it, she squealed, when he smiles. Like a teenager, like my cousin Kathy over guys in black leather jackets. Look, Mary, scaring me out of my sleep. He's smiling because he knows who the real murderer is. I was 7, on the worn pull-out couch. No room of my own. That thundering piano music, her always yelling. Didn't she care that I had to get up for school? I sat up and rubbed my eyes. From the bedroom, Pop snored loudly. Shut up, Mom yelled. If I wasn't awake now, I would have been. I can't hear my show. Pop kept on snoring. I dreaded school. Kids called me fatso. And Sister Stephen with that pointer. Get up to that board. If we got the answer wrong, she'd slap us. She was so mean. Meaner than that DA on Mom's show, Hamilton Berger, sneering know-it-all. You son of a bitch, Mom yelled at the screen. She didn't do it! Berger, you bastard! Leave her alone! Will you shut up? Pop yelled from the bedroom. My stomach growled. I shouldn't be hungry, not after bedtime. That's what everybody said. Sometimes it felt like food was all I had. Uncle Marky, Mom's brother, was the meanest. Put a lock on that fridge, he told Mom, so I'd lose weight, like he really cared. When I caught him in his house with his pants down, he smiled, like Perry Mason. I told you, Mary. Mom joined me on the couch. Perry knew who killed that rich guy and why. She pulled my covers up to her chin. He won again. The bedroom door opened. On his way to the bathroom, Pop glared at her. The last scene was at an Italian restaurant with a fat mustached guy in charge. At a table was Perry Mason and that secretary. Della Streeto, I thought, looked like Mom in pictures before she'd marry Pop. They were sitting close. Don't tell me. Mom sounded mad. There's nothing going on. Again, my stomach growled. I looked closer to see what they were eating. Bitch, she muttered as Pop walked past. Thank you.
Well, I think you have in the chat here that it's totally working, and someone said that it was brave to work without that net, the net of like a brand new story. You are equally fun to listen to, Cindy, because your voice is exactly right for your stories, and they're like noir and gritty and in your face. So awesome, wonderful reading.
Thanks. And nobody got killed, but still, we can all enjoy it anyway.
Yeah. Cindy Rosmus, thank you for being here with us tonight. Next, we're going to hear, and Yellow Mama. We should submit to Yellow Mama, right? Your
Yes, and guess who's here tonight? Ken Chris, the publisher of Yellow Mama. He's visiting.
Even better.
Yes.
Wonderful.
You can submit to us after December 1st because we're closed right now, but, I can sneak you through if you're my friend and you're real nice to me. Okay?
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from someone who's new to the FBOMB. Let's give him a kind of a nice welcome. Michael D. Davis. He's an oddball, a writer, and the writer responsible for nearly 20 books. The bearded small-town man has had dozens of short stories published and is a contributing writer to his local paper, the Tama Toledo New Chronicle, where he won the 2024 Iowa Newspaper Association Master Columnist Award for his column, Magic Mike. Let's give him an FBOMB welcome, Michael D. Davis.
Oh. All right. I only got one story, and it's called The Bird, because I couldn't think of a better title. All right. About 2 weeks before my 10th birthday, our neighbor gave me a dead bird. Mr. Nelson had seen me walking along the road and called me over. Coming out of his garage, Mr. Nelson carried it by its neck. I had never seen anything like it in my life. It was giant. If it could have stood, the bird would have been nearly taller than me. Mr. Nelson was always giving me dead animals. It really didn't matter what was what species. He'd call me over and hand me some creature he shot or trapped or got with a bow. My dad said it was good to eat different kinds of meat. It builds you up strong. Mr. Nelson knew this, so whenever he had something he thought we'd like, he'd give it to me to take home. Mr. Nelson was just that nice of a guy. I thought about asking him what kind of bird it was, but I didn't. I didn't want Mr. Nelson thinking I was stupid or something. I also knew if I had asked, he would have laughed. He would have told my father, and for who knows how long I'd get ridiculed for my ignorance. The fist of Mr. Nelson was big and hairy, gripping tight onto the creature's neck. Its head was slumped over onto his knuckles, its eyes wide and blank. Apparently, I had been staring too long at the bird because Mr. Nelson wordlessly shoved the animal at me. I took the bird by its neck just like Mr. Nelson had, but once he let go, my arm dropped with the weight of it. At first, I wasn't sure how I was going to manage carrying the bird all the way home, as it was so big. I tried a few different positions before settling on one that would let me travel with the most ease. The bird was slung over my left shoulder. I had both hands gripping hard on its neck, but it was still too long. The bird's feet dragged on the ground behind me. I was walking on the gravel on the side of the road, and the bird's feet kept kicking up rocks that hit the back of my ankles. I was getting tired and out of breath fast. My arms were starting to ache, and I was still a long way from home. I stopped to rest at one of my usual stopping points. I sat on a stump and dropped the bird in the grass. Splayed out from toe to head, the bird had to be 4 feet tall. I was 4'6", so I laid down next to it. I put my feet next to its and tried to lay straight to see how I measured up. I had to pull on its head a little because it kept slumping over, and I couldn't get an accurate estimate. When I finally had the bird laid straight, I saw how I measured up. Its head came up to my nose. I knew birds didn't sleep in beds or laying down, but there was something about the look of the bird that made me want to make it a pillow for its head. I wanted to make him comfortable. He already looked like he was sleeping. Well, if his eyes had been closed. When I finally decided to move on, I grabbed the bird like before, hefting it over my shoulder. It was a rather warm day. As I was walking with the bird, I started to sweat all over. My hands were starting to get slick, and I started to lose my grip, my hands sliding up its neck. I kept having to shift my hands to get a better hold. Feathers started coming off in clumps, getting stuck between my fingers. I readjust, trying to flick the feathers off my hands in the process, but it didn't work. The cold skin that laid under the bird's feathers, that seemed to be falling away more and more, wasn't smooth. It was bumpy. Nothing seemed to work. No matter how hard I gripped at the creature's neck, the bird kept sliding out of my hold and down my back. Finally, I stopped again. I was about halfway home. I had feathers all over me, and the bare patch on the bird's neck was huge. I needed a new plan. I laid next to the bird for a while, trying to think of what to do. A truck went by. I could have stopped it, asked for help, but I didn't. I knew that truck. It was a mean old lady with the ugly dog. Wherever she went, she had the ugly dog with her that left a trail of drool behind it. I'd have rather stayed laying in the ditch next to the dead bird until I died before I stopped the truck for help. Not many ideas came to me, but I finally decided to do the opposite of what I had been doing. I took one foot over one shoulder and the other foot of the bird over my other shoulder. The bird's legs were thin and cold. Its butt was just a few inches below my neck. I started off again. I soon realized this wouldn't work for long. The bird's head dragged along the gravel like its feet previously had. As its head bobbed, hitting the dusty, jagged rocks, more feathers were being torn off, and its eye was starting to leak. I was 2 hills away from home, and I once again needed to find another way to carry the bird. I finally decided to put its full body over my shoulders. My left arm held the neck, my right arm held the legs. I couldn't look up. The bird was too heavy on the back of my head for me to move it. I just had to look at the gravel and have the rocks guide me home. I came to the last hill. I was almost home. My house was at the bottom. I tripped over my feet. I fell face first into the gravel. The bird went flying. The carcass of the once magnificent creature bounced and rolled down the hill, leaving little bits of itself along the side of the road as it went. I got up as quickly as I could and went running down to see if it was all right. The bird was mangled, its neck no longer straight but unnaturally twisted, wings half torn off, its legs held on by a thread. I wanted to cry, I wanted to scream. When Mr. Nelson held the bird in his hand, it looked so beautiful, like something out of a book. I'd made it horrible, disgusting, ugly. I picked up the bird again, but I did not go to the house. I took the disfigured corpse to the backyard under an old willow tree. I dug a hole and shoved the bird in. Never told anyone that. Somehow my father never found out. The old willow tree is still standing there, so I guess it's still there, buried underneath. All right, thank you.
Great story, Mike. Really great. And I think the bird really works as a title.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, thank you for reading that for us, and thank you for coming to the FBOMB. Hey, Michael Davis. Next, we're going to hear from Andrea Marcusa, who's been helping me scan the Zoom for like intruders and everything, which is no small thing. I'll tell you, it's a little bit exhausting, I would think. But I appreciate her help as always. And Andrea Marcusa's writings have appeared in the Gettysburg Review, River Styx, River Teeth, Citron Review, and others. She's received recognition in a range of competitions, including Smoke Long, Best Microfiction, Cleaver, Raleigh Review, and Southampton Review. She's a member of the faculty at the Writers Studio in New York City and serves as a flash fiction editor for Cleaver magazine. For more information, visit AndreaMarcusa.com or see her on Twitter at D_Marcusa. Andrea Marcusa.
Thank you, Francine. And I have to say, this is an amazing group tonight. So many fabulous voices. I'm shrinking as I'm sitting here because I've done something totally different tonight. I actually tried to write a story with a beginning, middle, and an end. And so this is an experiment, and so we'll see if it works. Most of my stories are more voice oriented, but this is more plot. That's basically the difference. Okay, this is called The New You Wig Emporium. Back from con, jokes Jeffrey. Darling, my limo's double parked downstairs, I say, sliding into my workstation. In this slipper-sized salon, everybody thinks I took a rare personal day to shepherd my neighbor to a colonoscopy. A total lie. No one here will dig further. Our business is our business. It's all part of being the best wig emporium in Manhattan. And no, I don't have a limo. On a napkin beside my styling tools sit 2 salted caramels. I scan the salon for the secret gift giver, but everyone's got customers. Most of our clients have or are recovering from something awful, chemo, severe infections, or just aging. Maxine, the owner, is careful to hire stylists who naturally tune to customers. During my interview, she said, "Your small town Pennsylvania roots are kismet." I was stunned. The traits that thrived in that boring, folksy, small-minded place I longed to escape were valued in this glittering metropolis. I've not told anyone about my cancer, even Jeffrey, despite his sharing dishy details about his boyfriends. I'm just not ready. If everyone knows I'm sick, there's no escape, and I'd feel worse. I pop a caramel into my mouth, and my stomach turns. Even candy tastes bad. I reach for the lush strands of my hair until remembering they're gone. Last week I had Jeffrey chop them off before things became obvious. "Ellie, people would kill for your hair," he said. True. We charged thousands for shoulder-length wigs of real hair. Believing I wanted a chic bob for next month's 33rd birthday, he wove 2 thick black braids and lopped them off. "The image of Audrey Hepburn," he said, spinning my chair so I could see the back, then handing me my orphan braids in a plastic bag. The cold cap I wear during infusions tortures, like sticking my head in an iceberg, but it can help with hair loss. So far, chemo's been okay. Sick for a day, and I still have my hair, but no eyelashes except for magnetic ones I have fixed daily. Here, appearance is prime. Not looking fabulous, Jeffrey says, can get you fired. Genevieve, my new client, arrives in a navy baseball hat and pout. I touch the cap and ask, may I? Underneath sprouts scraggly strands of blonde, pink scalp and fuzz. Tears fill her eyes. I straightened it, then keratined, color, and this. A plucked chicken. A beautiful face, though. I assure Genevieve that we'll hide this mess while her hair regrows. Women and their hair, their crown jewels. Losing it wounds them. We supply hope, TLC, and a way forward. The opposite of my thoughtless and brusque infusion tech Friday, when I complained my fingers and feet throbbed and asked for medication. She said, no pain, no gain, handed me a Tylenol and the phone number of the pain management team. So contrary to small town nice, where people try to be kind. I burst into tears. But New York was my dream. Fashion, celebrities, adventure, no commitments, a total departure for country bunk and me. Going back home for treatment would squash me. My mom would complain that the city made me sick, the neighbors too, totally narrow-minded. To my left sits ancient Celeste, her walker, beside her. She adores Jeffrey and arrives monthly for wig washing. Nice lady. Last holidays, she gave our staff keychains. Year before, pine-scented candles. Across the salon, Sheila's arrived for wig styling. She's lived with metastatic breast cancer for 15 years and buys a new wig to celebrate every cancer anniversary. Her serenity and cheerfulness amaze me, considering her brutal medications and hospitalizations. But she has an incredible support system. Kind husband, sweet kids, friends, family. Glued to her phone, Genevieve makes machine gun taps on her keyboard. Today, I've no bandwidth for drama. My fingers ache and I itch all over, but I soothe her while taking measurements. We'll get you back to beautiful, don't worry. She tries on some factory-made wigs and smiles. Yes, smiles, while I explain that custom designs take time. She wants both. When she leaves, the pout's gone. It's busy today. I've 4 more appointments. Wigs are hot right now. There's no stigma anymore. People want to change their look. Others need them. One of my regulars, a newscaster, owns 12. Everyone's covering up or changing what nature gave them or took. It's not just me. Nobody wants to be themselves anymore. After my last client, Maxine appears and asks me to switch my day off. Normally, I'd say yes. I have no partner, nearby family, close friends, not even a cat. I'll check, I say, already knowing I can't because it's my infusion day. Hey, did you leave the caramels? Probably the candy fairy. So generous of you helping your neighbor. Oh, it was nothing. Outside, the heat hits. My scalp itches. I resist scratching. I hear my name called and turn. It's Jeffrey jogging towards me, holding a red box. I forgot to give you this, he says, for your braids. He inscribed the box with my name and lined the inside with satin. Thanks, I say with a quick hug. So sweet of you. Then I turn. My body hurts so much. I need to get home. But Jeffrey follows. I'll walk you to the subway, he offers. You okay? Where do I start? It's everything. I'm all alone, miles from home, with a mother who won't understand, and a disease that might kill me before I'm 40. Chemo, then radiation, surgery, no husband or partner who loves me enough to help clean up my vomit or take me home from treatments. I tell myself that this was my dream, that I must stay and tough it out. But really, I'm simply covering up bald patches, hiding things. I'm even hiding me. Jeffrey takes a strand of my hair and tucks it behind my ear. Half falls into his hand. Startled, he examines my scalp. Oh, hun! Then he embraces me. I sink into him. A gust whisks away more. I barely notice. It's the end.
Oh, wow. What a powerful story, Andrea. Wow. Thank you for sharing that with us. Andrea Marcusa. Beautiful. Jeff Harvey is our next reader. Jeff Harvey grew up near Memphis and now calls San Diego home. He edits Gooseberry Pie Lit. His fiction appears in Moon Park Review, Ghost Parachute, 5 South Lit, Bending Genres, Salmon Creek Journal, Does It Have Pockets, 10 by 10, Flash, McQueen's Quinterly, and many other lit mags. Jeff's debut chapbook, Life Would Be Perfect If Bottle Cap Press, was released October 2024. And so this is brand new. You have a brand new book.
This is brand new. Yes, thank you. And
yeah.
I've got
Tell us about it. Tell us where to get it.
It's through Bottle Cap Press, and I'll put the link in the chat.
Okay.
And very small distributor, 2 people, very small, brother and sister run it.
Yeah.
And so it's mainly through them.
Gotta love those presses. Like they just work their hearts out for you.
Yeah, they do.
Kind of wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, and I've got 2 pieces from my book.
Wonderful.
The first one is Different Breeds. A day after moving into our new home on the good side of town, Mama was getting ready to drive us to school. She put a hairnet over our rollers and gave us all a quarter for lunch. In the backyard, our neighbor's terrier stood over our poodle with his legs wrapped around her stomach. My brother laughed and threw a football in their direction, and we watched as the dogs struggled to untangle themselves. My sister cried out, "We've got to do something to save Charity." Mama just hurried us into the station wagon, never saying a word, never answering any questions. Dad sent Charity to live with another family in the country. For weeks, my sister filled Charity's bowl with Purina dog chow and cleaned her doghouse as if she'd be home anytime soon. When my sister finally worked up the courage to ask about her, Dad said, "She had 4 pups. They all died because Charity's a poodle and Wolf's a terrier, and that ain't natural." Charity never came home. That summer, my dad caught me and Gabe in the utility closet, naked and playing around. He whipped both of us and then called Gabe's grandfather. Dad sent me to my granny's house until school started. Every day I wrote letters to Mama about having to pray 4 times a day and that no one hugged me before bedtime. Later, I found out that my granny never mailed them. She had thrown them away. "That's the best way to teach you a lesson," she said. Gabe's family moved him to Jesus Camp in Central Tennessee. He never came home. In my 20s, I read in the New York Times that Jesus Camp closed due to multiple abuse accusations, physical and sexual. I called Gabe's sister. She said they never knew what happened to him. What Gabe had really wanted was to play baseball for the Cardinals. He never got the chance. And the next one is Counter 7. I found a job through a temp agency at Macy's. I'd have to write Mom a letter to tell her about this since every Thanksgiving, we used to watch the Macy's parade hosted by Ed McMahon. The agency told me I'd be taking inventory and to wear something casual. With only $30 left, I had to be perfect. Rent for my room at the Y was due in another week. I wore jeans and sneakers thinking they'd send me to a storeroom to count socks or umbrellas. But the receptionist led me to the cosmetics counter, which was staffed with ladies dressed like models. One of them reminded me of someone from the cover of Vogue I'd seen once at the dentist, with a pixie cut and wearing a yellow dress and black boots. I smiled at them, but their facial expressions never changed. They looked like they were always on the verge of a smile, but they never committed to one. My job was to count lipsticks with names like Coral Sunset, Purple Passion, and Orange Crush. After a few hours, a lady wearing pearl earrings and smelling of honeysuckle banged on the counter with her cane and snapped, "Hey, you!" Before I could explain, she demanded a tube of Chanel Brilliant Brown. I looked around me. Since all the other staff were busy, I pulled out a tube and placed it on the counter and stepped back. The lady put on her glasses. She glared at me, then at the lipstick, then up at me again, all while making a sucking sound with her teeth. Finally, she said, "I'll go across the street to I. Magnin." Minutes later, a Macy's manager arrived. She said a lady complained about my appearance and wondered what was happening to Macy's standards. She said, "I called the agency to ask them to find you a more appropriate position for your skills." Outside in the fog, I looked through the window at the ladies behind counter 7, none of them smiling, but they all seemed perfect for the part they played. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And congratulations on your book. Those stories were wonderful. So we look forward to reading more of them. So, so you can put the link in the chat. And also for all of you, all of the readers, I'm going to be posting the recording here on Facebook later. And in the comments under the recording, feel free to post a link to where we can get your books or where we can find you or anything at all you'd like to connect us to. Okay. So, thank you, Jeff Harvey. Next, we have Tina Berry, who also has a new book. She's the author of I Tell Henrietta, Aim Higher, 2024, Beautiful Raft and Wallflower, Big Table Publishing, 2019 and 2016. Her poetry and short fiction can be found at the Best Small Fictions 2020, Spotlighted Story, and 2016 Bending Genres, Unbroken, Sofla Pojo, Rattle, Verse Daily, One Art, a Journal of Poetry, and elsewhere. Tina has 4 Pushcart Prize nominations and several Best of the Net microfiction nods. She teaches at the Poetry Barn and Writers.com. Tina Berry.
Hi. Thank you, everyone. What beautiful readings. Just fantastic. So I'm going to start with 3 linked micros from a series that I'm doing called Lovers I Never Had. After my husband watched me sit glassy-eyed in front of the computer, I made up a story about an old boyfriend who direct messaged me on Facebook. My last date with the man happened at a Greek diner. Ordered spanakopita, 2 crusted triangles, large as baseball mitts, dark hearts of spinach, and the salty promise of feta. My boyfriend crunched into his, silent, staring as I savored mine. I gave up on him that night. He wanted my spanakopita, devoured it with his eyes. I might have shared, but he had never looked at me with such hunger. I was well into my 30s, said I was a widow. I thought a touch of tragedy would make me mysterious. My deceased spouse had been in the film industry, a stand-in for George Clooney, and in his earlier days, Warren Beatty. A gold-framed photo of the 2 of us, actually me with a long-dead cousin with a great profile, sat on my bedside table. How did he die? Tragically. First a gel, then a paunch, then too much weed and mini quiche, then a swan dive into the shallow end of Goldie's pool. Movies are a cruel business, I said, wiping away a tear. The Secret Service man known as Sven rang twice, said, remain on the line for B. Barack, I said. My heart cartwheeled when B murmured, that's me, T. We still laugh about the first time B escaped to my place. The disguise. No limo that day. The bodyguard drove a Subaru. B wore a wig with a gray-streaked man bun and sunglasses, hiding in plain sight. I spread a tablecloth on the living room floor, hand-fed B tiny treats, doubled quail eggs with caviar, mini carrot cakes, thumb-sized mud pies, all the things he loved. We talked and laughed, merged at the deepest level. But this lady doesn't kiss and tell. Michelle's anguish was real. B said his betrayal clouded her eyes. We're decent people, B and me. We tried, but we just couldn't let go.
Beautiful. And mouth-watering. I'm hungry now.
Thank you. Thanks,
Those were wonderful. And tell us a little bit about your new book.
My new book is I Tell Henrietta.
Mhm.
Francine was kind enough to blurb it for me. Thank you again. And it's different. It's micros, it's prose poems, it's a variety of different forms, and it's a collaboration with the artist Kristen Flynn, who contributed about 9 really beautiful images to the book. So there's that.
Well, thank you. We can, of course, get it on Amazon or bookshop.com or
Amazon. It's on Barnes and Noble, and you can have the publisher Aim Higher Press. Thank you.
Thank you so much for reading with us, Tina Barry.
Thank you.
Okay, we're in the home stretch now, folks. Next, we're going to hear from Brad Rose. He's the author of 6 collections of poetry and flash fiction, Word in Edgewise, Pink X-Ray, Detonations, Momentary Turbulence, Word in Edgewise, and No Wait, I Can Explain. His prose poetry has appeared in the American Journal of Poetry, New York Quarterly, Puerto del Sol, Folio, Clockhouse, Lunch Ticket, Cloud Bank, Vintage Genres, and over 100 other publications. His website is bradrosepoetry.com. And Brad, your book is new also, is it not?
It is.
Tell us about it. Show us.
No, I don't even know how to do this. It's Word in Edgewise.
I love that cover. Gee.
Thank you. It's available everywhere. It's on Amazon and Barnes and Noble and Trina Barva, and that's everything I know about it. So I encourage people to read it. I'm going to read 4 pieces, 1 paragraph pieces tonight. They are more of my usual hijinks. First one is called One-Eyed Crocodile. I may be halfway to hell, but I'm willing to give myself the benefit of the doubt, especially now that I'm speed dialing Satan's clammy phone number. Hello, Planet Beelzebub. What temperature are your eyeballs? Yesterday at the Lemon Lime Luncheonette, I sliced my orangutan pie with my new 2-tone party knife. Skin is one of my favorite organs. Sometimes I'm not sure whether I'm a barrel of laughs or a box of giggles, but there's no use getting hung up on the finer points of slapstick. Besides, who drinks Shirley Temples anymore? My closest friend, Cozy Piranha, tells me that the imperfections of the human race used to bother him, but not any longer. Now, he loves the sound of fingernails being polished and the outdoorsy scent of internet perfume. Thanks to his double-barreled eye wall, it's plain to see why Cozy is twice as ugly as a purple yam at a swamp-side cookout. Whenever the blind eye of a passing hurricane winks at me, I weep one-eyed crocodile tears in return. Like Cozy says, half of something is better than all of nothing. Say, that's a beautiful monocle you're wearing. I have a pair just like it at home. Scorpions. How much does your breakfast weigh? No, I mean without the eyes. Of course, you've got to wonder what's in it for the other scorpions. I guess everybody here is a different drummer, although it seems to me like there aren't enough corners in this room. Maybe I need a new playbook. Overall, you've got to guesstimate what animals are thinking. Most are just a mix of random chemicals and stray electricity. You know, heads or tails. But it could be worse. It's a shame about those baby ones, though. Hey, would you like to taste something really different? Try one of mine. The dipping sauce is my own recipe. No, go ahead. Take two. There are plenty more where those came from. Do the best you can with what you've got. As career day approaches, I'm wondering, is a tattoo really the best long-term investment for me? I mean, from a skeleton crew's perspective. I guess there's no real reason to fear the alphabet, but I'm a glass half empty kind of dude, waiting for the other flip-flop to fall. No use lollygagging around until the cows come home. Hey, hand me those kittens, would you? No, just one at a time. Obviously, a chainsaw would make it easier. Here, let me show you how it's done. And the last piece is called Like the Ancient Egyptians. I wouldn't be discouraged if I were you. It's not as bad as that time I failed the hands-free calisthenics test for the snake dancing teaching position at Poison Ivy U. No, it wasn't even a tenure track position, just an adjunct gig with only the human students. I even told them I enjoyed thinking about death, but that didn't seem to make any difference. Sometimes, though, bad luck is really good luck in sleep's clothing, you know, like inflammable pants worn by a drowning arsonist. But that's all water under the bridge now. Incidentally, did you read that article about the side effects of sword swallowing? In my opinion, those would never happen if you just used a gimlet, but who am I to make any forensic recommendations? Unfortunately, in all this thirst-quenching noise, you could really work up an appetite. On the other hand, I wouldn't want to be late to work just because I was at home embalming my relatives like the ancient Egyptians did. I'd rather send a substitute. Sure, this is an interesting time to be alive, but if you ask me, not that interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. You never disappoint in like how you're going over here, no, you're going over there, then you're going over here. It's just amazing.
Thanks.
Really fun to listen to your work. Brad Rose. And our final reader tonight, Elan Barnahama, is the author of the novels Escape Route and Finding Bluefield. His writings appeared in Paris Lit Up, Synchronized Chaos, 10 by 10 Flash, Book City, Syncopation, Jewish Fiction Journal, Sage Cigarettes, HuffPost, Public Radio, and elsewhere. He's a New Yorker by default, a Mets fan by geography. Elan Barnahama.
Thanks. So the Los Angeles Dodgers won the World Series recently, and they had to beat both the Mets and the Yankees to do that. And so I have a flash piece that actually ended called Home Team, and originally appeared in Book City, but it ended up in my novel, Escape Route. And so I'm going to read that and take in honor of all three teams. Dr. Steele pleaded with my mother to keep her legs crossed and keep me inside her, while sending a nurse out to bring the floor's new color television into the delivery room so he could watch the final innings of Game 7 of the 1955 World Series. My mother had other things on her mind, like getting me to stop kicking her and punching her insides. As for me, I just wanted to watch the game. The nurse plugged in the TV in time to see Sandy Armourus run down Yogi Berra's line drive in left field and throw a dart to Pee Wee Reese, who relayed the ball to Gil Hodges for a double play. And when the room erupted with a thunderous cheer, the outburst easily heard in the waiting room, it prompted my father to push through the delivery room and check on his wife. Double play, Dr. Steele said, as if expecting my father. I was taking my own overdue seventh-inning stretch when in the bottom of the ninth, Elston Howard sent a ground ball to Pee Wee Reese. The nurses shrieked. Dr. Steele stood up, and my mother took advantage of the commotion to let out a scream which got my attention, and I started swimming toward the light. I popped my head out in time to see Reese's throw sail wide and low. I wiggled my shoulders as Gil Hodges stretched himself across the diamond to snatch the ball for the final out. Brooklyn had finally won their championship. I freed my feet as the streets of Brooklyn exploded in cheer and revelry. The doctor gathered me in his sure hands and faced me toward the television so I could watch the Dodgers celebrate their victory, made that much sweeter, perhaps, by defeating those damn Yankees. Maybe it was because Brooklyn had never won a World Series despite 7 chances, or maybe it was because I was the first boy he delivered after 11 consecutive girls that made Dr. Steele hand my father his Johnny Padres autographed baseball that he had kept in his medical bag and insisted that the ball be placed in my crib next to me, and the doctor added, place the ball next to his left hand. Then, before leaving, he removed his Brooklyn Dodgers cap that he was wearing under his surgical cap and hung it on my bassinet. Every adult in my Queens neighborhood claimed that they had either come from another country or Brooklyn. Many swore that they celebrated in the streets that October night in 1955 when the Dodgers beat the Yankees. Forget about it. You'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who'd ever attended a game at Ebbets Field, let alone understood the infield fly rule. And it didn't matter that not one of them had been there in 1947 to watch Jackie Robinson hop over the foul line into fair territory, take his place on the field where he smothered ground balls and changed baseball in America forever. What mattered was that the Dodgers were loud, hardworking, and totally unsophisticated. They were Brooklyn, and they gave every immigrant proof that in America the bums did have a chance of coming out on top. But then those same wonderful bums packed up and left without warning, loaded up the caravan and escaped west, trading air pollution for smog, Coney Island for Malibu, Broadway for Hollywood, and hot dogs for who the hell knows what. Though both my parents spoke several languages, neither spoke baseball. The game was an enigma to those raised on soccer, and really they had little interest in learning, as the nuances of navigating their new American life left little time for them to decode the idiosyncrasies of baseball. Until Sandy Koufax. Sandy made them notice. Sandy gave them a character in the game. Sandy was a left-handed Jew who threw a baseball like no other lefty ever had. Sandy turned the game into a drama they could follow. And in 1963, when the soft-spoken, Brooklyn-born Jewish race, marginally observant Sandy came back to New York with the Los Angeles Dodgers to face the hated Yankees again in the World Series, his story gained traction. When he beat the Yankees in Game 1, striking out a record 15 batters, and just a few days later won Game 4 to lead the Los Angeles Dodgers to a World Series sweep, he became a hero. Still, none of those heroics came close to Sandy's performance the following year, when he was scheduled to pitch the first game of the World Series on Yom Kippur, a solemn day of fasting and the most visible of Jewish holidays. Sandy announced that he was not going to pitch out of respect for Yom Kippur. What Sandy was not going to do became the story, and it didn't matter that he wasn't religious or observant, or that my family wasn't either. Sandy showed it was possible to be Jewish and American. The following summer, Koufax was scheduled to pitch against the Mets, and my parents surprised me with tickets. It was their first and only baseball game. I wore Dr. Steele's Brooklyn Dodgers hat, but it didn't stop the Mets from beating Sandy that day. I knew this is the way baseball worked, but I was worried that my parents would be disappointed in Sandy. Don't judge the outcome, my father said. It's a rare moment in life that we can control the results, but we can always control our effort. By that measure, he added, Sandy's day was a success. And as we made our way out of Shea Stadium that evening, my father bought me a Mets hat. It's time to retire your Brooklyn hat, he said. It's time for you to root for the home team. Thanks.
Wonderful and great timing of you choosing that story. Wonderful story. David Kirschenbaum, I think, is the editor of Book City, right? And he's a big baseball fan, I believe.
Yeah, him and his father, and yeah.
He's always posting pictures of that. So, well, great story, and nice to have you here, Elan.
Thanks.
Elan Barnahama. Okay, so that brings us to the end of another FBOMB, and I want to thank the readers, Zvi A. Sesling and Paul Beckman, of course. Paul Beckman, wonderful to have you here. And thank you for sharing from your book. Everybody go buy this book. It's wonderful. Niles Reddick, Karen Schauber, Sandra Arnold, Cindy Rosmus, Michael Davis, Andrea Marcusa, Jeff Harvey, Tina Barry, Brad Rose, and Elan Barnahama. I'm going to turn off the recording and we can hang out and chat a bit in the Zoom room. But I want to thank everybody for being here. And if you're listening on the recording, thank you for listening on the recording. And I always like to say on Zoom readings, drive safely and good night.